step away from the desk. Now.
I'm sorry?
You heard me. We got reports of fraud and trespassing.
This is my office.
Yeah? You expect me to believe that?
May I have your badge number and your supervisor's name?
Don't start with the attitude. Move before this becomes an arrest.
I'm asking a lawful question.
You refuse to comply? I am detaining you right now!
You will regret this!
It was 8:17 on a rainy Monday morning in downtown Atlanta. Inside the Myers Financial Tower, the lobby buzzed with quiet tension. Elevator bells chimed every few seconds. Executives hurried across polished marble floors carrying coffee and laptops. Security gates clicked open and shut as workers rushed toward morning meetings. The city was already on edge after a major fraud investigation made headlines the week before. Officer Daniel Mercer walked into that building carrying 14 years of police experience and a reputation many people inside the department already knew about. Behind closed doors, some officers called him the checker. Because Mercer had a habit of stopping black professionals and questioning whether they truly belonged in wealthy places. Over the years, complaints followed him everywhere. Harassment, racial profiling, aggressive stops. But internal affairs ignored them all. Mercer brought in arrests. Mercer produced numbers. And as long as lawsuits stayed away, supervisors looked the other way. That morning, standing inside one of the most powerful buildings in Atlanta, Mercer believed his instincts were right once again. He was about to make the biggest mistake of his career. Vanessa Myers was 39 years old and had spent most of her adult life inside boardrooms, courtrooms, and community centers. Before becoming a business executive, she worked as a corporate attorney in Atlanta for nearly 10 years. People who worked with her said she stayed calm even when deals were falling apart around her. She spoke carefully, listened closely, and never raised her voice unless she had to. She graduated from Howard University with honors before earning her law degree from Columbia Law School. Long before the money and headlines came, Vanessa was known for discipline. Friends said she treated success like building a house. One brick at a time. No shortcuts. She later became co-owner of Myers Urban Holdings alongside her husband, Richard Myers. Together, they helped grow the company from a small real estate firm into one of the largest development companies in Georgia. The glass tower officer Mercer stood inside that morning was not just another office building. Part of it belonged to Vanessa's family. But Vanessa never liked attention. She avoided interviews, skipped magazine covers, and rarely appeared at public events unless it involved charity work. Instead of chasing cameras, she focused on running the company's philanthropic division, funding school programs, housing projects, and small business grants across Atlanta. Inside the company, employees respected her because she treated janitors and executives the same way. With respect. That Monday morning, Vanessa arrived early for a meeting with investors from New York. Rainwater still clung to the bottom of her coat as she crossed the lobby carrying a coffee in one hand and legal files in the other. She wore a simple gray suit with no flashy jewelry, no designer labels, nothing that announced wealth. Most people walking past her would never guess she co-owned the building. And most junior police officers would never recognize her face. That included Officer Daniel Mercer. The moment he looked at Vanessa Myers, he did not see an owner, an attorney, or a respected executive. He saw someone he believed did not belong. Officer Daniel Mercer entered the downtown Atlanta Tower at 8:21 that rainy Monday morning after receiving a vague call from a newly hired private security contractor inside the building. The message had been simple. Possible suspicious person near executive elevators. Mercer walked through the glass lobby doors with rainwater dripping from his boots onto the polished marble floor as executives rushed through security gates carrying laptops and coffee cups. Elevator chimes echoed through the massive atrium while receptionists answered phones behind sleek marble counters. The entire lobby moved with the tense rhythm of a busy financial district morning. Then Mercer noticed Vanessa Myers standing near the private executive elevator speaking calmly with the receptionist. One hand held a coffee cup while the other carried a stack of legal files pressed neatly against her side. She looked professional, composed, and completely at home in the building. To everyone else in the lobby, she clearly belonged there. But the moment Mercer saw her, suspicion crossed his face. Without hesitation, he walked directly toward her. "Who are you here to see?" he asked sharply. Vanessa turned toward him calmly. "I work here," she replied. Mercer slowly looked her up and down. "What company?" "Myers Urban Holdings." Something about her confidence seemed to irritate him instantly. Nearby employees began paying attention as the tension between them quietly started building. "Employee ID," Mercer demanded. Vanessa calmly set down her coffee and opened her leather bag, handing him her executive access card, business card, and state ID. Mercer barely examined them before handing them back dismissively. "These don't prove anything," he said coldly. A nearby assistant quietly pulled out her phone while another employee whispered under his breath, "That's Mrs. Myers." Mercer either ignored the comment or refused to acknowledge it. Instead, he stepped even closer. "You need to come with me," he ordered. Vanessa remained composed despite the growing attention around them. "Officer," she replied carefully, "I'm standing inside my own office building." Mercer's jaw tightened immediately. Around the lobby, conversations slowed, phones quietly rose into recording position, and employees realized this encounter was becoming something far more serious than a routine security check. Officer Mercer stared at the identification cards in his hand for another moment before shaking his head. "Fake IDs exist," he said flatly. "People steal access cards all the time." His voice carried across the lobby now, loud enough for nearby employees to hear clearly. He pointed toward Vanessa's business clothes and legal files like they meant nothing. "Fraud suspects dress nice too," he added. The comment caused several workers near the front desk to exchange uncomfortable looks. Vanessa remained calm, but the atmosphere inside the lobby was changing fast. People were no longer pretending not to watch. Vanessa slowly folded her hands in front of her and kept her voice steady. "Officer, have I committed a crime?" she asked politely. Mercer did not answer the question directly. Instead, he took another step closer and glanced around the lobby as if searching for support. "You're refusing to cooperate," he claimed. Vanessa blinked in confusion. She had already handed him every form of identification he requested, yet nothing seemed to matter. It was becoming clear that Mercer had already decided what he believed long before he approached her. At that point, Mercer was no longer investigating a complaint. He was defending the conclusion he had already made. Every answer Vanessa gave only seemed to make him more determined to prove himself right. It was like watching someone force the wrong puzzle piece into place even when it clearly did not fit. The truth was standing directly in front of him, but his pride would not allow him to step back. Vanessa noticed the growing tension around them and chose her next words carefully. "Can I please have your badge number?" she asked calmly. "And your supervisor's name?" Mercer's expression changed immediately. To him, the question sounded less like a request and more like a challenge. Nearby employees watched silently as phones continued recording from different corners of the lobby. Vanessa remained respectful. "Also, what is the legal reason for detaining me?" she asked. Mercer tightened his jaw again, clearly irritated that she understood her rights. The younger officer standing near the entrance shifted uncomfortably but stayed quiet. Around the lobby, conversations had almost completely stopped. Even the receptionist looked nervous now. The tension spreading through the building no longer felt like confusion. It felt like the moment before something serious was about to happen. Officer Mercer's patience was disappearing fast. His voice grew louder with every sentence, echoing across the marble lobby as more people stopped to watch. "Step away from the desk," he ordered sharply. When Vanessa did not move immediately, he stepped sideways and blocked the executive elevator with his body. "You are obstructing an investigation," he said. The accusation made several employees look at each other in confusion. From their view, Vanessa had done nothing except answer questions calmly. But Mercer spoke with the confidence of someone trying to force control over a situation that was slipping away from him. The lobby no longer sounded normal. Elevator chimes still echoed through the building, but most conversations had stopped completely. Employees stood frozen near the security gates while others quietly pulled out their phones and began recording. The receptionist behind the front desk looked visibly nervous, glancing between Vanessa and Mercer without knowing what to say. A group of young interns whispered near the waiting area, shocked by the scene unfolding in front of them. Above them all, security cameras captured every second from different angles. The entire moment was being preserved piece by piece. Then a second police officer entered the lobby. He looked younger, quieter, and far less aggressive than Mercer. The moment he approached, he quickly noticed the difference in behavior between the two people standing in front of him. Vanessa remained calm, speaking slowly and carefully. Mercer, on the other hand, looked angry and tense, like a man trying to win an argument instead of solve a problem. The younger officer seemed uncomfortable almost immediately, but he stayed silent and allowed Mercer to remain in control. Vanessa understood that every movement around police officers could be misunderstood, especially in a situation growing this tense. She spoke clearly before touching anything. "I'm reaching into my purse for my phone," she said carefully. Mercer watched her closely without responding. Vanessa moved slowly and kept her hands visible the entire time. "I am not resisting," she added calmly. Several employees recording nearby could be heard whispering quietly as the pressure inside the lobby continued building. But Vanessa's calm behavior only seemed to frustrate Mercer even more. "Stop talking and follow instructions," he snapped. Vanessa did not raise her voice. "I am complying," she replied evenly. That answer seemed to make Mercer even angrier. It was becoming clear to everyone watching that this situation was no longer about safety or investigation. It had turned into something far more personal, and the tension inside the lobby was reaching a breaking point. The breaking point came fast. Without warning, Officer Mercer suddenly grabbed Vanessa's wrist in front of the crowded lobby. The movement was sharp and aggressive, causing the legal files in her arm to fall across the polished marble floor. Papers scattered in every direction as shocked gasps echoed through the building. Several employees stepped backward in disbelief while phones instantly lifted higher to capture everything. Somewhere near the security gates, a voice said loudly, "That's Mrs. Myers," but Mercer ignored the warning completely, as if he had already gone too far to stop himself now. Vanessa tried to keep her balance as Mercer tightened his grip on her arm. "Officer, you are making a mistake," she said calmly, even as the situation spun out of control around her. But Mercer was no longer listening. In front of dozens of employees, investors, and reception staff, he forced Vanessa against the marble reception counter hard enough to shake the items sitting on top of it. The receptionist froze in fear while one intern covered her mouth in shock. The younger officer standing nearby looked stunned but still failed to step in. "You are being detained for fraud," Mercer announced loudly. His voice filled the lobby like a siren. "Impersonation. Resisting detention." Each accusation sounded more extreme than the last. Employees stared at each other in disbelief because none of it matched what they had just witnessed with their own eyes. Vanessa had not threatened anyone. She had not raised her voice. She had done exactly the opposite. Yet Mercer continued escalating like a man trying to force reality to match the story in his own head. Phones were everywhere now. Some employees openly recorded while others pretended to text as they captured video from a distance. The lobby cameras above continued watching silently from every angle. What had started as a simple question near the elevators had turned into a public disaster unfolding in real time. Like a fire growing larger with every gust of wind, the situation was now moving beyond anyone's control. Even pinned against the counter, Vanessa remained composed. Her breathing stayed steady as she looked directly at Mercer. "You are unlawfully detaining me inside property I co-own, she said clearly enough for nearby phones to record every word. For a brief second, the lobby went completely silent. But instead of stopping, Mercer pulled out his handcuffs and locked them around her wrists anyway. And in that moment, the entire building seemed to realize they were witnessing something that would change lives forever. The sound of the handcuffs clicking around Vanessa Myers' wrists had barely faded when the private executive elevator behind the lobby opened with a soft chime. At first, nobody moved. Then a tall man in a dark tailored coat stepped out into the silence. He looked to be in his late 50s, calm but commanding, with the kind of presence that made people straighten their posture the moment he appeared. Employees across the lobby recognized him instantly. Conversations stopped completely. Even the sound of phones recording seemed quieter now. Richard Myers had arrived. The billionaire real estate developer slowly took in the scene in front of him. His wife stood handcuffed against the marble reception counter while legal papers remained scattered across the floor around her feet. Mercer still held her arm tightly, breathing heavily from the confrontation. The younger officer nearby suddenly looked pale as realization hit him all at once. Several employees lowered their eyes, already understanding that something irreversible had just happened inside the building. Richard stared directly at Mercer for a long moment before finally speaking. His voice was calm, but it carried through the lobby with the weight of a judge delivering a sentence. "Why are you arresting my wife?" he asked. Mercer froze instantly. For the first time since entering the building, his confidence cracked. His grip loosened slightly on Vanessa's wrist as confusion and panic began fighting across his face. The younger officer's expression dropped immediately, as if he already knew exactly how bad the situation had become. Around the lobby, employees stood completely still, watching the moment unfold like a bridge collapsing in slow motion after years of hidden damage. Richard stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Mercer. Then he turned briefly toward the building security staff standing near the entrance. "Call corporate legal. Now," he ordered. The command was immediate and direct. Security staff rushed into motion without hesitation. Mercer looked around the lobby as if searching for a way to regain control, but it was already slipping away from him. Then Richard faced him again. "Do you have any idea whose office you're standing in?" he asked quietly. The question hit harder than shouting ever could. Mercer looked up at the company logo stretched across the marble wall behind the front desk. Then he looked back at Vanessa in handcuffs. In that moment, the truth finally crashed into him all at once. He had not detained a trespasser. He had handcuffed one of the owners of the entire building. Within hours, the videos from the lobby began spreading across social media. What started as a few shaky phone recordings quickly turned into millions of views. People replayed the moment again and again, trying to understand how a routine security check could turn into an executive being handcuffed in her own building. The footage showed Vanessa calm, the crowd frozen, and Mercer escalating without clear reason. By the end of the day, the story had gone viral. News channels picked it up fast. Headlines began to appear across websites and TV screens. One of them read, "Executive handcuffed inside her own office." Another called it a serious abuse of authority inside a corporate tower. The story spread not just because of what happened, but because of what it represented. People saw themselves in Vanessa's position and asked a simple question: what if it happened to me? An internal investigation was launched almost immediately. Investigators began pulling Mercer's record, and what they found created a much larger problem than a single incident. There were earlier complaints from different professionals across the city. Reports included patterns of racial profiling, unlawful stops, and overly aggressive behavior during routine calls. In several cases, his reports had been changed or written in ways that made his actions look more justified than they actually were. Warning signs had existed for years, but they were ignored. As the investigation widened, more people came forward. A black doctor described being stopped outside his clinic for looking out of place. A banker said he was questioned for nearly 20 minutes outside his own workplace. A tech executive shared a similar story of being treated like a suspect in a building he helped fund. Different locations, different times, but the same pattern appeared every time. Mercer repeatedly questioned whether people belonged in the spaces they occupied. The deeper investigators went, the clearer the system failure became. Internal emails showed that supervisors had dismissed earlier complaints without serious review. Some cases were closed within days with no real follow-up. As these details became public, outrage grew quickly. City officials began to panic as pressure increased from the public, the media, and civil rights groups demanding accountability. What began as one arrest was now exposing a much larger problem inside the system itself. The fallout came quickly and did not slow down. Officer Mercer was officially terminated from the department after the full review of the incident and his past conduct. His certification was permanently revoked, meaning he could no longer work in law enforcement in the state. On top of that, he was personally sued, and a review of his pension was opened as part of the disciplinary process. What once looked like a stable career collapsed in a matter of weeks, as each new finding added more weight to the final outcome. The department itself also faced serious consequences. Public pressure forced leadership to accept major reforms. Mandatory bias training was introduced for all officers, not as a formality, but as a required condition for continued service. An external oversight board was also created to review complaints independently, so cases like this would not be quietly dismissed again. The goal was clear. Rebuild trust by making sure power could no longer operate without accountability. Vanessa Myers moved forward with a federal civil rights lawsuit. The case focused on unlawful detention, misuse of authority, and violation of her rights inside her own workplace. After legal review and negotiations, the case ended in a settlement we are not aware how much. But even as the number made headlines, the meaning behind it was deeper. It was never really about the money. It was about recognition of what had gone wrong, and making sure it could not be repeated in silence. In a public statement after the case closed, Vanessa spoke calmly about what happened that day. "The problem wasn't that he didn't know who I was," she said. Her voice remained steady, but her words carried weight. "The problem is that he decided I couldn't possibly belong before he asked." That single idea stayed with many people who heard her speak, because it pointed to something larger than one incident or one officer. In the end, the cameras in that lobby did more than record an arrest. They exposed something deeper. They did not just capture one officer making a mistake under pressure. They revealed a mindset that had been operating quietly in the background for years, shaping decisions without challenge. So the question remains for everyone watching this story: what should happen when authority is used this way? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe accountability still matters, subscribe to Her Majesty Stories for more real-world justice stories that expose what really happens behind closed doors.